Today's dialogue is on two Hong Kong women filmmakers. First one is Louisa Wei, who is with us. And the second one is Angie Chen, but she is now in New Zealand joining film festival. The major member in the dialogue is Professor Boyle. She has been teaching documentary, history, aesthetics, media criticism, alternative cinema for 35 years in the New School Media Studies, and she has written 8 books on documentary. The first thing we all want to listen is how Professor Boyle sees the two films, especially Louisa's films.
Why it seemed a good idea to bring an American critic who is not part of the Hong Kong scene to be looking at these women who both had lives in China and Taiwan, in the case of Wa-Ling Engel, but also a life in the United States, because they are about individuals of great significance, great influence, who've crossed boundaries, geographic boundaries, career boundaries, challenged themselves in ways that I think speak to both cultures. So in that sense, it's very nice to be a part of this dialogue. I was really impressed with the aesthetics of this film. I think it's a beautifully crafted film. Everything from the animation for the titles and some of the sequences, the beautiful, beautiful sound design. Sound design in documentaries has been something of a lost art until recent years, and I think as a number of filmmakers around the world have begun to recognize how important it is not just to use sound to cover up mistakes or to make continuity when it doesn't exist, but to really use it artfully, that sound has taken on a greater role. And I think Louisa, working with brilliant saxophonist and composer, has created a sound that's very evocative of the period. It's not just found sound, it's sound that really supports the momentum of the film. And I think one of the things I'm really struck by is how cinematic a film this is. It uses the language of cinema to communicate in a very appropriate way, because she is honoring a pioneering woman filmmaker, and so there should be that sort of marriage, if you will, of one artist's work with another artist's work. The archival research that was done in terms of films from the time period, the photographs that were discovered, the colorized treatment of them, it makes for a very visually engaging film.
We see many friends and relatives of Esther Ng talk about their memories of Esther. But we also get some information that when Wu Pang and Moon Quan wrote their autobiography, they did not mention Esther. This contrast is very sharp and very interesting.
One of the things that is interesting to me in collecting memory, the authority figures are not institutional figures. Sally, her sister, is one of the most important figures in this film, and she's charming.
好寶貴啊！
話犀利舊時後生影啊！
係我家姐啊！我都冇呢啲相啊！佢喺嗰唔知喺邊攞。呢個我家姐，佢哋後生嘅時。
咁靚啊嚇！1931年啊！
係我唔肯影相，要買個 ice cream 俾我。
She bribed me with an ice cream cone to take that picture. That memory, which who would have thought that would be important, becomes very significant in this film because there's a photograph that documents it and it connects us to the person who's the subject of the film. And it becomes meaningful and very human and a real bridge. I think this is a film of scholarship, but it's a very accessible scholarship, partly because the witnesses, the people who feed this information to us are not the old standard authority figures, you know. When it comes to memory, you want to see and feel and understand the person. It doesn't translate so well when you're reading a transcript or a book. There's something very powerful and evocative when you actually have the person in front of you. So this is a work of history, but history in the age of memory. The complication for me as a viewer watching the film has to do with the interconnections of the three characters in this film. The principal one, of course, is Esther Ng, but Anna May Wong and Dorothy Arzner, really you've interconnected three lives here. And I'd love to know from you how you, in your own thinking, develop those three lines and how you feel about the merging of them. Because I have some questions about whether or not the connectedness or lack of connectedness supports or takes away from the essential nature of Esther as the chief character of the film.
Before I knew who Esther Ng was, I already know who Dorothy Arzner was. So as soon as I saw Esther Ng's picture, I was like, it totally reminds me of Dorothy Arzner. Some of my friends who are Chinese American, they said, you can take Dorothy Arzner out. If I take her out, it would lose the part on women filmmakers' history as a special history with its own lineage. Anna May Wong, as beautiful and as famous as she was also treated very badly by Hollywood. If Esther Ng tried to work in Hollywood or if she remained in the United States, Anna May Wong is a benchmark to mark all the things that she will be limited in. Every national cinema, they have women directors, they have pioneer women directors, but they were not recorded in history. David Bordwell's like Film Art or Film History as the book for film students. Look up the index for Dorothy Arzner. She's not there. Louisa Wei was not there, but Louisa Wei was even bigger than Dorothy in the silent period. Their story all got lost. And for someone like Esther, it's easier for her story to get lost because she works between different cultures, and then she works in the crack of the cultures anyway. So that's why I deliberately write that line.
Then, it had already been 6 years since Dorothy Arzner left Hollywood. Her successor as America's sole female director was, in fact, Esther Ng.
There's a real interest in incorporating this film and this history into the history that's being written today about women's film. Or films by women. I told Louisa that a project that I think was conceived 15 years ago in the United States to finally write women directors' history almost completed the silent era. And this film will be part of the next chapter. And there's real interest in seeing it and incorporating it. Everybody knows that the most important conversations take place in the ladies' room. Right? So I had a power conversation with Winnie Fu from the Film Archive, and I said to her, this is tragic that these films have disappeared, and it's the thing that's missing. It's the one thing that it cries out for, is to actually be able to see these extraordinary actresses and these films. So I would hope that once this film reaches a wider audience, that it may in fact bring to light some of the prints that have got.
First of all, I want to reiterate, actually Deirdre has mentioned the significance of this film as an archival film that will, that summarize a very important part of Hong Kong film history. and fill in the big gap. So, and I cannot wait to see more of these works to come out. And I know it's a hard job. You mentioned 6 years, I think, including Kasuk's research is much more than 6 years.
Mr. Law Khan, he leads us all the way from the 60s till today for almost half a century in doing good work for Hong Kong film culture.
You mentioned about Bruce Lee there, and for me, it's more like a gag. I'm wondering what's the purpose of bringing just that bit, that tiny bit in, and in your next version, would you cut it off?
Esther was a very good friend of Bruce Lee's family. While she was directing Golden Gate Girl, They Need a Baby, and then there was a baby around, and there was a Bruce Lee, and he played a baby girl, which is a gender twist. All these things were quite interesting and connected. When we were in Hawaii, we totally didn't expect the Bruce Lee story. A story was there, and then everybody has their connection with Bruce Lee because he is the Chinese American that made the entire Chinese race very proud. And then so they want to keep that memory alive. That's why Bruce Lee is there. And I refuse to cut him out.
Louisa, I just want to say thank you for the wonderful documentary. I especially like the fact that you have a kind of a personal connection to it. Remember in the documentary, you asked a question to Esther's friend, I believe.
Do you think she's more like an American person, like her way of thinking and communication with other people?
I think it's more Chinese.
Yeah, perhaps I just want you to elaborate on this issue of cultural identity.
She was born in San Francisco, she grew up there, and of course for about 19 years of time, and then her life was mostly constrained in Chinatown, in San Francisco. But you're still living in America. When you're the box office ticket seller for the Mandarin Theater, you still watch lots of American movies. That bit that I showed, like when Xiu Yinfei and Lu Haiting was visiting Niagara Falls.
馬尼連夢露做嗰道飛步玉橋就喺呢處拍嘅咧。
I don't think this is a line that written by Choi Yun or by Wu Peng, and I don't think they would do something like that.
Yes.
That's why it's all these little things that sort of shows Esther. Why people like Marlon Brando was not going to another Chinese restaurant in this, because here you have this charming host who can communicate with you in English with no barrier. But other Chinese restaurant owners, they were like Esther's friends. They were like, they don't know how to run the business in America, and there are lots of the things that they couldn't communicate with local people. So I thought both of these were in her. Altogether, her whole life she spent about less than 4 years in Hong Kong, and for all her 55 years of life. And also remember the interview that she had with the Seattle columnist Lynch. She said, you Chinese actresses were very modest too. They just insist on wearing clothes. And these are the kind of expressions was very American. But at the same time, to her friend Genevieve Lau, who grew up not learning Chinese. When somebody's Chinese was really good and you see how this person interacted with other Chinese people, you think this person is very Chinese. That's how I see this.
After watching these two films by two Hong Kong women filmmakers, how do you position them in the documentary tradition? Yeah, because we all want to know where we are.
Well, it's interesting when Louisa talked about the pressure to include herself in the film, and Angie too. And I think that is part of where documentary has come in the last 20 years, the expectation of some kind of self-reflexivity as a way of announcing your acknowledgement that you are the one taking responsibility for the point of view. And it's become a norm, sometimes expected, sometimes demanded. I think one should always have the choice, but I think it made sense in both of these works to include the filmmakers, and in that sense, they're very much in line with documentary practices. Certainly an interest in the past and a recuperation of feminist past, or the significance of women who have historically been marginalized across cultures, is very much in keeping with where documentary is today. I think of the two, Louisa's is probably more likely to cross boundaries, and I could see this film screening at any international film festival.